friends. I'm going to be sharing with you my second framework, which is guided imagery in music, also known as GIM. For those of you that don't know, I'm sure many of you do, but I'm going to share with you again. I'm absolutely fascinated by GIM. I always have been. I remember first learning about it, or beginning to learn about it, in our first semester intro to music therapy class, and it has just been something that has stuck with me ever since. I think it's really, really cool, and I actually plan on getting training in GIM eventually, so this is a nice little intro to a little bit more about it, in addition to the weekend workshop that we had last year. So, that being said, let's get into it. So just a quick little history. It was developed by Dr. Helen Bonney in the 1970s. It was actually developed with the idea to therapeutically induce an experience similar to that of hallucinogenic drugs. So she was involved in some of this research that was initially being done with these drugs. So when the research was first being done, music was used as a part of this research with the hallucinogenic drugs. And the music was used to kind of help provide a box and a stable framework. And it was used to help participants in the research kind of fully let go and more fully experience their emotions while under the influence of these drugs. It was found that music really did aid in the overall experience of these drugs. So Helen Bonney reasoned that if music can aid in the overall experience with the drugs, maybe the same effect could be had without the drugs and with music alone. And she found that to be true, that music did create the same experience without these drugs being involved. So, some salient features. This first here is a quote from the article that I use to get most of my information from. So GIM is music psychotherapy in which specifically programmed classical music is used to generate a dynamic unfolding of inner experiences. So that can be a little confusing, but we'll kind of break this down a little bit more and some more of the salient features here. So one of the big things about GIM is that music and the music therapist are co-therapists. So really, the music and the music therapist really have to work closely together. So obviously, the music cannot think for itself, but it is very important in the process and in the experience, and the music therapist really has to be in tune with where the client is at in the overall process and how that music aids in the experience. So the music therapist serves as a guide. So the music therapist guides the client through the experience they're having while also providing a grounding in reality, because while the client is having experiencing these images, it is a different reality. It is their own reality that is different from the reality we live in. So when the client is experiencing some of these images during the GIM session, some of these images may be direct representations. So maybe a client is seeing images of their family or of the house they grew up in as a kid. But some of these images may also be symbolic. So maybe one of the images a client sees is maybe like a group of birds or something, a family of birds, and that could be symbolic of their own personal family. And so, apart from being a guide and a grounding in reality, the role of the music therapist is to help the client focus on what they're experiencing and encourage them to continue along in the process. So some more salient features here. One of the great things is that the music allows whatever is important to the listener to emerge. So instead of verbally kind of suggesting some images, which have been done in music imagery in the past, the music, because it is classical music, does not have any words, it cannot suggest. So while you might select a piece of music with the intent of it representing a forest on a summer day, that might not necessarily be what the client views in their mind, but they will view whatever is important to them at that moment. So another important feature of GIM is that after the GIM session, it is really important to process the images that the client has seen, and this can be done verbally through writing or through artwork such as mandalas. And overall, GIM is a holistic, humanistic, and transpersonal therapy. So there are 4 main steps to a GIM session, and this might help clarify some of the salient features I mentioned. So the first step is discussion, and this is between the client and the therapist, and this is for the therapist to help get a general understanding of the client's history, especially if this is a first-time session. They can kind of get an idea of what the client has been through, maybe some therapeutic goals that they would like to work on. And if this is not the first session, it can be a discussion of the previous sessions that have been had and what kind of progress the client would like to make. Because I guess I didn't mention this earlier, GIM really is the client really guides their own process because they are experiencing these images and they are working through these images themselves. While at the end of the process, the therapist might kind of help the client understand what has happened. It is really the client that is working through these different things that are happening subconsciously. So anyway, the second step is induction, and this begins by first inducing some relaxation. So the therapist will have the client lie down on like a couch or a mat and do some guided relaxation. This can either be done physically, like with muscle tensing and relaxing, or it can be done through imagery. And this second stage also works on bringing about very clear focus, and sometimes the relaxation alone will do that, but in other cases the therapist might have to go a little further to really get that focus in. So the third step and the longest step is the music listening, and these are usually 30 to 40 minutes long. And so depending on what the client has discussed with the therapist and what kind of therapeutic goals or issues that the client has, the therapist will select an appropriate music program. So these are pre-made music selections that can be used to work through various emotional and subconscious things. So after the music listening has finished, the fourth and final step is processing. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, one of the big, really important features of GIM is the processing after the music listening and images. So there can be some therapeutic success from just the music listening, but what really brings about therapeutic change is the processing after the music listening, after the GIM session. So a lot of times this is done verbally and is most effectively done verbally, but a lot of times clients might be overwhelmed by the images they've seen and just don't feel comfortable doing it verbally, so they might also do it through writing, like journaling. And this can also be done through artwork like mandalas, such as I mentioned earlier. But this processing is really an important step to the overall process of GIM. So this is my main resource for this presentation. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you later. Bye!